Well, my friends, here we are. The first Sunday of Advent, and boy, has this year gone by flying. Despite all of our worries and anxieties, be not afraid is mentioned so much in scriptures, and that is what we should be mindful of today, despite our readings. And if you didn't catch it, didn't today's reading sound a little familiar? As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, when we were in Cycle B, now that we're in Cycle C, we studied Luke, we were in the Gospel of Mark. And on the 33rd week, Father Michael preached, and the Gospel reading for Mark is similar to the one that we hear today. And yet, we hear so much doom and gloom, and here we are in a time of festivity, right? Our colors are different. Look, we're in purple. But yet, the church marks the color purple as one of penitence. And penitence requires concentration, requires attentiveness. It requires for us to be ready for the hour and the day which no one knows when the Son of Man returns. Scary, isn't it? So why does the church choose these end-of-time readings for the beginning of time for the church year? It's puzzling, isn't it? It's so that we are mindful of our destination and of our journey. You know, all journeys have an end point, don't they? And when we see that end point and we know where we're going, we start making plans. We make choices. We set things up. We get things ready. And here we are in the time of Advent. And that is exactly what we are called to do. We hear the gospel of the end times because Christ is always exhorting us to be ready, to be vigilant, to stand erect and watch for the signs. Last week we celebrated the Feast of Christ the King, which marked the last Sunday of the outgoing church year. And what were we celebrating then? Christ being the King of all things, both in heaven and earth. So here we are, a new year. And once again, let me wish you a happy new year. Advent, the word comes from the Latin word adventus. It's a term meaning coming, an arrival. It's a time of preparation and waiting for the coming arrival of Christ. And certainly here we are in weeks before Christmas, waiting for the arrival of the Christ child. I know in the Portuguese tradition, we will normally set up a nativity scene, but you will not see the Christ child there. He is hidden somewhere off. And yet, what my mom used to do is the three kings were also far off, and each day we would move him closer and closer and closer to the manger, until the day that he miraculously appears in the crib, and so do the magi at the same time. And that is how it should be with us. Each day should be a moving forward toward our destination, which is in heaven with Christ our King. While Advent is set aside to commemorate Jesus' coming in the flesh at Christmas, it's also set aside as a time for the coming of Christ in glory on the last days. And the three readings that the church chose for us today talks about another coming. Christ comes at his birth. Christ will come again in his glory at the end of days. But many people, unfortunately, don't realize that Christ comes to them each and every day, specifically at the Mass, which is celebrated throughout the world every day. It's also a time to open ourselves up to the Lord coming into our lives. But what must be necessary is that we prepare. What we do while we're waiting is just as important as the events for which we're waiting for. Advent gives us an opportunity for us to examine our hearts, and our actions by setting right in our lives what needs to be put right, to see how we have failed and to look at ways in which we can do better. It is a time of transformation, no doubt, to prepare ourselves by watchfulness and prayerfulness. Our life in this world is a journey. It's a pilgrimage. And it may seem strange that we started this beginning with a story of the end of the world. But these readings today urge us to face the realities of life. And it is important that we should know where we are going and where our destination is, because if we do not know where we are going, we run the risk of not getting there. When we decide by our free will choice where we want to go, it guides our choices and influences what we do. But it all depends on one's priorities and attachments, doesn't it? If we are so attached to the things of this world and those temporal, short-lived joys that give us these fleeting satisfactions, then we will miss our true destination, where all things are satisfied in full for all eternity. Jesus, the Son of Man, is coming. There is no doubt about it. And he wants us to be ready when he comes for us, whether it's at our death or at the end of the world. Because there will be a judgment, my friends, and we are reminded of that every time we pray the creed, as we say, he will come again to judge the living and the dead. For those who totally ignore what is right and good, who live only for themselves, who do not care about following God's commandments, who want nothing to do with loving God or loving neighbor, for them, judgment will be bad news. It'll be much worse for them than getting cold in their Christmas stockings. But the gospel, you just heard, is good news, not bad. It's like Jesus is telling us, I know if you've been bad or good, and be good for goodness sake. He wants us to be ready when he comes. As he tells us in the gospel we just heard today, we can therefore stand erect and raise our heads because our redemption is at hand. That is the good news, my friends. Our redemption is at hand. He comes to save us, many times from ourselves, but certainly from the tragedies, the sadness, the hurts, the pains of this world. If on that day, the day that he does come for us, whether it be at the second coming or at our death, which he certainly will be there, and we will face him face to face, and he finds us doing our best, living his way, the way of the gospel, we'll be able to stand tall and look him straight in the eyes and know that we have been forgiven. It is important for us to know that destination. And knowing that will be based on an honest assessment of our own lives. We do not know how much time we have on this journey we call our lives. For some, it may be very long, 90 years, 100 years, God bless. For others, it may be much shorter, 30, 20, 10 years, months, maybe even weeks. The length of the journey actually isn't what's important. It's what we do on that journey that is. Let us use this time of Advent to get ready for Jesus' coming. Let's make this season more than just mistletoe and malls or tinsel and trees or presents and parties. Jesus didn't suffer and die on the cross for us, only for us to have failed in our response to love him back. If there are things in our lives that would keep us from holding our heads up high in the presence of our God when he comes, if there are things we're doing that we know are contrary to what Jesus wants us to do, or things we're not doing that we know that he wants us to do, then it's time to clean up our act. Let's get rid of everything that keeps us from fully welcoming Christ into our hearts and into our lives. Everything that keeps us from being the people God created us to be. We can start right here, right now, with Jesus coming to us in the Eucharist, as we prepare to receive him in the liturgy of the Eucharist. If we do that, my friends, there will be no better birthday gift that we could give to the Christ child. It would be a gift more precious to him than all the gold, frankincense, and myrrh from all the wise men who ever lived. And in return, we will receive the gifts of hope, peace, love, and joy. God bless you this season and each day of your lives.